Hi everyone, this is Ricky Spencer, and welcome to another episode of our Voices series for the sociology of media. And today we have a famous author up and coming and a wonderful experienced educator and researcher by the name of Dr. Tom Brunzell. I hope I pronounced it right. He's received his PhD at the University of Melbourne. He has a Master of Education, School Leadership, Master of Science Teaching, and a Bachelor of Arts. Dr. Tom Brunzell has experience as a teacher, school leader, researcher, and education advisor. Currently, he is the Director in Education at Barry Street and Honorary Fellow at the University of Melbourne Graduate School of Education. His new book, Creating Trauma-Informed Strengths-Based Classrooms, co-authored with Dr. Norrish, is now available as part of Berry Street's professional development and resources, and as well as booksellers worldwide. So let's welcome Dr. Tom. Welcome.
Hello, Ricky, and hello, friends. Nice to be here today.
So tell us, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, we wanted to make sure that teachers learned the new sciences around trauma-informed education and made sure that teachers also had skills and strategies to develop well-being for students, particularly the students that need these strategies the most.
And tell me, what, for anyone that's listening that might not be familiar, what is trauma-informed?
It's the umbrella term of trauma-informed practice really has some of its origins as far back as 20 years ago, when social care, therapeutics, and clinical workers were thinking we need to have a consistent approach to helping people manage the impacts of trauma and chronic stress. And particularly as that science evolved for educators like us, it really became about teaching teachers and school staff about the impacts of trauma, the impacts of adversity, and specifically what can happen to a young person's physiology, child development, and capacity to learn when they are contending with some significant dysregulation within their own bodies at times. And so from my own past, so much of this is to try to correct the course for teachers like me who used to make terrible mistakes when I was a classroom teacher by lecturing kids on you have to make better choices and you have to find ways to sit still and stop yelling at me and those kinds of things. And now I realize that I was making some mistakes, although I had the best intentions in mind. I just didn't have this information. I didn't have the science. I didn't have these strategies because they didn't exist back then when I was a teacher. So I suppose it's a long history of my own karma, as it were, to provide this for the field and our next generation of teaching professionals.
And what is it that a mainstream classroom doesn't cater for students who have experienced trauma?
I think that a lot of us, when we were becoming educators, I guess I'm speaking to our educator friends out there, no one ever taught us that our students' heads were connected to something, and that is their bodies. And from the research that we certainly have been following and have been building on around post-traumatic growth in children, that if we don't help young people understand the impacts of what they're experiencing in their own bodies and give them strategies for body de-escalation and body balance and body alignment, and then when we have those strategies in place, we can begin to help kids begin to coach themselves a little bit stronger and have more tools when their thinking brain turns on. I can't help but do this because Dan Siegel's hand-brain model, this idea of when we're reacting, we are working from an emotional state, which stops us from thinking. And so I keep doing this because it just comes out of me like that. But our hope is that if educators can understand the impacts of what everyday life and the daily stressors around kids understanding their own identities, understanding their own cultures, understanding some of the systems that really are not in their favor right now. And that's why we're working together as a system through this work. That once kids become empowered by teachers that are empowering them, they can make better choices and they can be more aware of what's happening for themselves in learning.
So with your research in the book that you co-authored, were there spaces or places that you were able to observe young people going through certain or talking in particular countries, or was there a focus in Australia? Where was the
Yes, our practice very much is centered at the Berry Street School, which is a particularly special place. It's a high school that is multi-campus across Victoria. So Victorians out there, our campuses are in Morwell, Shepparton, Noble Park, and Ballarat. A number of our students have experienced out-of-home care and other adversities within their life that have made it quite difficult for them to engage well in mainstream education. So our campuses very much are set up to support kids who have really struggled with educational disruption and educational disengagement. And I'm so proud of our work at the school because we are holistically embracing the strengths that kids bring with them that perhaps in their old schools or past education experiences, people saw that as a problem or deficits, including the strengths they bring, the incredible resilience they have every day when they come to school, and we want to build on that. And our teachers are, again, I'm so proud of our teachers. They are very aware of the needs for complex unmet learning needs, needs to help kids understand their own pathway through gender diversity and inclusion and the concerns they have as they're navigating their own identities. And of course, we are proudly culturally responsive in our teaching. And so we want to ensure that all of our young people's culture and family groups and communities are engaged in their learning.
And the Berry Street model approach, has that been applied to schools throughout Victoria? Or
yes, it has. So we originated this process of strategies to work with young people with complex unmet needs, and we realized that it's not just something that you can say to teachers, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that and everything will be okay, because we realized this is really systemic work, and a school really benefits when they begin to understand this isn't just about learning a couple of simple things after school, but it's really reconceptualizing the way that a school moves, the way culture and climate and belonging and community is created from the moment kids enter the classroom or the school gates to the time that they leave. And so this process that we developed for our own teachers, a lot of teachers wanted to learn it. And about 6 years ago, we began to have the capacity to help schools. So now we get to help schools across the country in all states and territories, and including international schools. All of that's online right now, of course, as we are in the middle of a significant worldwide disruption. But in that, we've been able to partner with communities, and particularly side by side in Aboriginal communities across the country as well, to make sure they learn our trauma-informed strengths-based practices.
And with this approach that your team has developed, is it just teachers that work in the classrooms?
No, I know I as an educator person and as an education researcher, I do focus on teachers, but no, Ricky, this is for everybody. And when I say everybody, it's everybody. We love it when we work with the school and we see the front office staff and the ground staff and all the people who would support kids throughout the day. In fact, we know, and our goal is that every single young person in a school has a healthy relationship with a trusting adult. And oftentimes that can be non-teaching staff and allied education and support staff as well. So we want a consistent language. So our kids, when they're scanning their world and realize, this adult's saying the same kind of things as this adult, and this adult treats me the same way as this adult, then that consistency creates safety. And that's exactly what we're aiming for.
And how do the young people feel about being in this space, in this program?
Initially, they can struggle because initially they have not had the climate and culture that was really set up to support their needs. And also, I mean, we're a high school, so we meet young people in year 7, and year 7 is, even for the most regulated of us, year 7 can be a quite challenging year. And you know, it's you're too young, I think, really to set professional goals. I mean, you shouldn't be thinking about professional goals at that point. You're making that transition into your middle adolescence. And so we work with young people when they arrive who, you know, they're not sure what the Berry Street School is. They know that they've experienced a lot of struggle in their mainstream schools. So we have to do a lot of work to build trust and to build buy-in. And one of our values around this is fairness. Like, everyone gets what they need to succeed with us, you know? And so to have kids understand, oh, this is a place that if I proactively seek support before I may make a few mistakes or bad things may happen, if I lose my mind or lose my temper, our goal around intervention for our students is to always know, if you proactively get your hand up or find ways to communicate to teachers, I'm struggling, then that is the most resilient thing you can do in those moments of adversity. But you can imagine, for us to build those healthy, trusting relationships takes time and very conscious teaching and very conscious things that we know teachers can do.
And tell me, what was one thing that you found in your research for this particular publication that you weren't expecting to find?
One thing that we found is a lot of people, when they have a concern, they want a solution. They want to know what to do. You know, we work with so many hardworking teachers who are like, look, this kid has bananas behavior when he doesn't get what he wants. He wants the iPad and he wants it now. What do we do? And so we understand that concern, and I've certainly had that concern as an educator over the years. What we're trying to do through our research in this new book is help people understand it's never as simple as one simple solution, one simple strategy, but we want to offer what we would call polarities of thought, or helping you balance pathways of intervention to help both accurately assess what this kid would need to meet his needs in healthy ways and what you can offer. So for instance, one of those polarities we like to call, does this kid require strategies for bottom-up regulation or top-down regulation? And this comes from our therapeutic trauma-informed practices, that, you know, bottom-up regulation says, if you consider from the neck down the bottom of our body, and from our thinking brain, or from our head up the top of our body, you know, is this kid struggling because they are struggling with the dysregulated impacts of contending with stress, that the last thing they need is somebody to just start telling them what to do. Instead, we would say, if a young person's really struggling with their regulation, they need adults to frankly shut up, stop lecturing kids, and realize that so much of our intervention is nonverbal and creating nonverbal safety. So we love the nomenclature of side-by-side interactions, that when you're supporting someone in learning, that instead of facing them head on, we want you to be shoulder to shoulder, side by side, two human beings moving forward together in interaction. And a lot of teachers, even when they hear that first moment, they go, oh, I can instantly think of all the times that I've looked at kids and looked down and stared down kids and said, you need to stop it. And then of course kids arc up and they're saying, well, this is how I survive in the world, and I'm going to tell you where to go. And so even thinking, this kid is not ready to listen to you from the top down, there are things you can do to make this more possible for kids to relax and feel you're the safe person in their lives. So then you can have a restorative conversation and two people can listen better to each other.
Mm. And within your research, did you find there was a difference between male and female young people in how they respond to trauma?
What a great prompt for future research. I have to say that is a next stage for us, because in our research, we are constantly on the hunt to incorporate young people's voices. And we are right now in the middle of developing a version of our work that would really help teachers understand the very specific needs of our LGBTQIA plus community, because we understand the impacts of trauma and adversity are very specific to help our young people contending with their own identity journey. But also, another way to answer that question is we haven't found a great deal of difference between different gendered experiences within this work, because what we do find quite successfysuccessfully is with the strategies that I've been talking about are really for everybody, and not just everyone in the staff, but everyone in the school. But another way to position this for our listeners today is that adults are constantly modeling this for young people. And adults are constantly modeling adulthood and how we respond as adults. And so no matter what is happening for the young people around us, we want young people to be able to look up to adults and think, I can trust you because you're a pretty consistent person. And the ways that you're managing everyday adversity, I want to figure that out too.
And with the it must be a wonderful experience being in a room of young people developing trust. Are the classrooms similar in numbers to what a mainstream classroom? Like, do you have 20, 30 people in the room, or?
So no, and that's why I always say it's a very special place. So at Berry Street, we have put in so many years of resourcing and research in our practice. So like I said, it's a very special place. We might, in our own campuses, we might have between 7 and 12 young people in a classroom with 2 adults. Sometimes that's 2 teachers, sometimes it's a well-being worker and a teacher. We are set up to do things in a very particular way because our young people absolutely need and deserve the very best we can give them. And also, we work at Berry Street to make sure that our young people are in the right places at the right time. So sometimes case managers or families or carers will call us and say, hey, I want to explore if Berry Street School would be right for my kids. And we do a very holistic assessment and make sure that in any given community, if we can serve you the best we can through our trauma-informed practices, great. If maybe the young person requires a different kind of education, then we'll do that. But also, the whole point of the book and our work at the Berry Street Education Model is to share these strategies with schools across the country, because we realize as our early intervention approach and our systems aware approaches, we know that so many mainstream teachers, after they learned our stuff or read the book, they call us and say, oh, this is so obvious to me now that if I'd had this knowledge a few years ago, I could have shared this with my whole school, and we wouldn't have kids who need the Berry Street School if we had done better within our mainstream, huge environments. And so everything we've done is adjusted for instance, one teacher to be able to do with 25 other people in the classroom, because we realize teachers have many, many hats on, right? They're instructors, they're well-being people when they need to be super aware of child development and the impacts of stressors on learning, and they need to be community builders. And that's a big ask. So we want to make it more possible for teachers and staff.
And one thing that I found in my research and talking to pre-service teachers, that comes up, and even accomplished teachers, is the idea of boundaries and how boundaries can impact relationships between students and their teachers. Has your work come up with ideas that can really support that building of boundaries? And is that more so important when we're working with kids who've experienced trauma?
We very much have centered the notion of boundaries, because Ricky, when I hear you use the word boundary, my brain instantly goes to healthy relationships. And so, many of our young people have experienced abuse and neglect from people who were in their lives to care for them. And so if you have been experienced a relational boundary disruption in your earliest years, and when I say earliest years at Berry Street, we put a lot of focus on infant mental health as well. Those boundaries can make it very difficult by the time to understand for young people, if they haven't had those healthy boundaries modeled for them. By the time they get into school, it can be very difficult for young people to understand, there is a difference between my parent or carer and my teacher and the principal and my well-being or my social worker. All of those people play a role, and it is very important to us in our work to understand where each role supports, overlaps, and helps each other out. So as a teacher person, I know that I'm not a clinician, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist. So it is none of my business as a teacher to do dyadic work or to do one-on-one work with kids to explore their psychological family history, their past, their family stories. That's not something I was trained to do. However, as a teacher, I need to know how to create relationships in the classroom for learning. And that's a specific skill, which is, say, learning is not easy, right? Like if you can just, if you, I said before that our kids, when they meet us, they're happy as clams to just sit at desks and do addition worksheets. Nobody has a fight when you give them basic addition, but that's not learning. That's just rehearsing what you can already do. Learning is about facing a challenge that you're not sure what to do, and your stress response begins to escalate just a bit or very quickly. If you have struggles with your own self-regulation, you think, I can't do this, this is embarrassing, I'm going to lose my mind. And that's what happens to a lot of our kids at the beginning. And so the relationship is everything. If I may, I'd like to introduce something that we talk about in our book, which is every single staff member at Berry Street is well aware of this. We call it the circle of security, which is a, yes, good, you're nodding. So the way we interpret circle of security is that it's an attachment theory that helps us explain that healthy relationships might be considered on these polarities. Here's another idea around polarity. It's never simple. We need to consider both sides of something. And so one of the polarities of the circle of security is safe haven versus secure base. And so safe haven will explain as when a child trusts you enough to come into your relational care to say, look, the world's confusing, I'm upset, this is angry, I don't want to be here. And the adult has the skills to help de-escalate and help soothe the central nervous system of the person in front of you to say, let's just take a breath together. Let's be side by side together. Let's restore what's happening. That's important. The other side is secure base, which is about healthy limit setting and helping kids understand, look, there is a boundary to this classroom or to learning or the boundary of our relationships. Like it would be unsafe of me to give you what you want right now because this is not the right time and the right place in the right way. And a lot of our kids have figured out, I'm just going to have a reaction, or, sometimes that takes over automatically, or they generate that reaction to say, I will figure out how you're going to give me what I want. And at Berry Street, we are constantly reflecting on that because a lot of times we are so grateful for kids to make it to school on time and do what they got to do to show up. But at the same time, it's not a free-for-all. Like, we can't just say, oh, it's just, you could just come here and hang out like a clubhouse. They have those spaces too. But creating healthy classroom boundary is helping, and expectations is helping the young people learn this is the way the world works, but we want to help you learn that in the most supportive ways.
And if we were to send out a message to concerned family and caregivers, what advice would you give to these families in the home that they can do to support their child or young person's learning taking place in the school?
I would love to situate my answer in the time and space that we are right now, if that's okay. So we are recording this in the middle of August 2021, and we are now in our 6th lockdown here in Melbourne. We are witnessing our friends up in New South Wales in a lockdown that has no endpoint right now. And the ACT has just gone into their first lockdown in maybe a really long time. So the concern that you've just raised is pressing and important for us, all of us right now, as we support young people to stay the course of learning. So yes, I do have some things that are quite important, I think, for all parents and carers to understand. Number one, we're in this together. I completely understand everyone's concern about academic learning. And as a country, we are going to have to work together to help each other make up for the lost learning time. But the last thing I want parents and carers to feel the burden of that on their own, because that is our responsibility as a community and as a nation to move that forward together. The other thing I want parents and carers to know is that teaching is not just another subset of parenting. And I feel like parents sometimes feel like, oh, I feel like I should be able to have better strategies right now to get my kid to finish what they need to finish. And we want to alleviate that stress on adults to say, no, you don't have to feel the weight of the world to make sure you understand how to do triple number multiplication or help them solve that really strange, real world assignment they have to do. But I would say, and hopefully this is a bit of hope for everybody, this is an excellent time to build resilience in learning. And I'll define that as, when you reach a speed bump in learning, how do you know you've reached a speed bump? What are the signs your body's telling you? So your brain begins to freeze up. You feel a little bit of escalation. You might feel a little sweaty, like, oh, I don't want to be here right now. Being able to articulate that is the first port of call for so many young people, because they don't even realize they're frustrated. They don't even realize their body has suddenly responded in a certain way. So being able to notice those we call them micro moments of frustration, and then being able to gently prompt kids into how might you best learn, or what can we do to just get a few more minutes before we need to give your brain a break? Is it that we need to find and create another nook in the home for you? Is it that you just need to take a breath? Is it just we just need to go outside and take the dog for a walk and come back? But that notion, what I'm trying to describe, is self-care, and specifically self-care when learning. And then finally, I want everyone to realize all of our kids have strengths. And even if they're resisting in a moment, that is a strength. It's the strength of persistence. It's the strength of perseverance. But they are challenged at the moment, and we want all adults to realize our young people are constantly showing their strengths. It's up for us to recognize, help identify, and make sure our kids know we see those strengths.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Doctor. And can you tell us where can people get a hold of your latest book?
Oh, Appreciate the question. So we are very happy to sell our book through Berry Street. I'd love people to check out our Berry Street website. So just very easy to find on Google's and other social media, everything. And then, of course, you can find my book on Amazon and all other booksellers around the world.
Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, we have included these links underneath the webcast, so you'll be able to access that and purchase your book today, because I think it's a perfect book for parents, caregivers, social workers, youth workers, educationalists, and anyone interested in understanding, the Berry Street model of practice, which I can espouse to is excellent, and it works wonderfully. This is one of the best models I've ever seen working with young people, and it really does change lives. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you,
Dr. Tom.
Ricky. Glad to be here.